Episode 6 of The Bear starts with Tina waking up at 6 AM, getting ready and cooking all in the first half hour. She and her husband David discuss the apartment's increasing rent, but he tells her not to panic as he's expecting a raise soon. She goes to work at a confectionery and a calendar tells us that this was in 2018. However, she's not cooking, but rather working at a desk. Unfortunately, she's then called into a meeting where she's told she's lost her job. She tells David about it that night and promises to find a new one. Despite her setback, Tina begins to look for new work with optimism and leaves a resume at various places but finds no luck. 2 weeks in, Tina hates that she isn't doing anything and isn't able to find any leads. Even when she finds a profile that is the same work she did at her last job, they don't hire her because she doesn't have a college degree. She finally gets a call for an interview and starts to feel positive about things. However, when she gets there, she learns that the job has already been given to someone else. The receptionist barely looks at her and Tina leaves in a rage. When she heads back to the bus stop, she sees that her bus is delayed. She needs a place to hang around for a bit and what's across the street but the original beef. She goes inside and takes in the chaos of the restaurant where Christopher, Richie and others are running around holding the place together. She gets a free Italian beef sandwich along with her coffee and heads to an inside room where Neil is playing on an arcade machine. Michael notices that Tina is sobbing her eyes out and Richie tells Michael to tell her to stop or she's going to scare all the regulars. Michael does end up approaching Tina and they start talking about their respective days. Michael talks about how his day has been hard because of a possessed toilet and delivery fees and they don't have enough staff. Tina unloads about her own day as well. We then see the scene from episode 1 where Michael shows Tina the picture of a dish Carmy sent him. He raves about his baby brother and how he not only knows what he wants, but is also really good at it. While Michael doesn't like a lot about his job, he likes the food is around for most celebrations and good times. Michael recalls a time when he went on a field trip as a kid and entered a building and saw a bunch of offices. He was overwhelmed by how so many people had dreams and achieved them in that building. But he somehow knew that wouldn't be him. On the other hand, Tina talks about how she's been seeing all these kids working at the job she wants and how they seem so hungry and don't have to worry about rent. She says she's jealous of them. As she talks about how she'd take any job she can get, Michael gets inspired and tells her he needs a new line cook. He does give her a disclaimer about the yelling and chaos though. He's then called away by Richie and Tina says she'll think about it. At home, Tina takes out a t-shirt from the original beef and smiles. Episode 7 of The Bear Season 3 begins with a clip of Carmy and Claire back when they were together and happy. Now we see the flashes of both him and Richie at the restaurant, each musing over their own worries. Sydney has moved into a new apartment and hasn't signed the partnership yet. She now gets a text from Adam Shapiro, who says he has something to talk to her about. At Carmy's therapy group, another man talks about how his relative got sober and apologised, and now he feels like he needs to be happy. But instead, he's stuck with all her terrible behaviour from the past. The group counsellor suggests a word should be said out loud instead of festering inside oneself. At the restaurant, the Fact's Uncle Gary comes by to give them a new tube light. Sydney meets with Shapiro, who's actually glad that Terry shut her place down because he is now going to open his own place. And he's looking to hire a CDC. And he's considering Sydney for the position. His offer is also a partnership deal, but he does want to start quickly, so he'll need to know soon. Sydney says she'll think about it. While Marcus is going through Carmy's notebook, he finds a picture of a group of world famous chefs. Carmy says they talked a lot about legacy and how something one person creates is taken by another and becomes something else. Sydney arrives and joins the conversation. Carmy admits if he had to leave a legacy, he'd want to filter out all the bad stuff. Marcus says he wants to be someone who listened and learned and was a great emergency contact. Chucky and Christopher, who used to work with Michael earlier, start work alongside Ebra at the beef window. They help Ebra smoothen out the process and immediately the beef window moves faster and better. Elsewhere, Ted Fack chats with Gary and asks him about the time he played baseball. He describes how someone convinced him to take drugs in order to bulk up, but then he was caught and that was the end of it. Ted, turns out, used to bet on the game. Natalie laments that 2 sets of guests are cancelled. Richie, who is sitting with her, talks about how service hours are still total chaos. They talk about her baby, which is almost here now, and Richie describes how they were going for dinner when Tiffy's water broke. Just the day before that, he'd gone on a road trip with Michael. Meanwhile, Sydney is venting out her frustration on the boxes in a dumpster. Inside the kitchen, Tina gives Ebra a clipboard to help with all the papers. She then offers Nat some advice about childbirth before telling her that a restaurant is out of seafolds. Nat decides to go buy some. On her way out, she comes by Sydney, who is listening to her father's voicemail about an issue with his radiator, and tells her to sign the agreement. Richie tries giving his staff an inspiring speech before service, but ends up fumbling it and Sydney has to take over. Sydney goes in to find Carmy working on the next day's menu, and he brushes away all her inputs, not realising it as he does. Nat is putting boxes from the store into the trunk of her car when all of a sudden she starts getting labour cramps, and that is where episode 7 of The Bear Season 3 comes to an end. So this episode returns to the entire team working at the restaurant once again, but the pace continues to be a tad slow. What's more, this episode doesn't have the tight structure and crisp writing that some of the series' best episodes do. This was the same issue in episode 5 as well, and I'm hoping that it's not a recurring problem with this season. Some of the focus on side characters like Gary is a great addition, but some of the scenes, like those with the facts, were maybe not entirely needed. As a whole, the story still isn't addressing the issue with Carmy's system, and it's getting a bit frustrating. What's more, the growing distance between Sydney and him isn't very believable. The thing is, the last few episodes have shown Sydney's growing frustration with Carmy, but they haven't really explored it. It's been surface level with shots of her giving Carmy sidelong glances, or looking on with pursed lips and a furrowed brow. But for someone who was given a partnership deal in the restaurant, there should be more for her to consider leaving the place. Not only have we not seen much of her in a dialogue, she also has barely stood up to Carmy's behaviour, which seems a bit unlike her. She hasn't openly talked to him about this once. Without all of this, the fact that she would consider leaving just doesn't feel very convincing, but maybe that'll change in the episodes ahead. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.